comes from. Expression hanging in there. Hopefully not from the gallows. I did read something interesting yesterday. Now, I don't go looking for interesting things to read, but about the guillotine, there was some question about how quickly do people actually die if they get their head chopped off? Because the whole idea, Mr. Guillotine was his name, who invented it, trying to be a very, what's the word? Humane way of executing people. But then they were wondering about it, and one, I don't know, late 1800s, one of the people who was in charge of like that, he picked up the head afterwards. It was a woman, and the woman kind of looked at him like, he goes, oh my God, she's not really that dead. So it brought up some questions in this, they called in a physician to check this out, what's actually going on, and some other execution was there. This is all in France. And the person's head was cut off, and the doctor was right there and picked it up and noticed to his watch that the eyes were fluttering and this, that, and the other thing. And then he looked at him, and the eyes opened, and looked right at the doctor. He's holding his head, the head. And then after a few seconds, so they decided actually it's not instantaneous death. So I think 1939 was the last execution in France with the guillotine, they figured. It's not the most, so it's interesting. Hare Krishna. So on that happy note, hope I got you all wide awake, talking about getting your head cut off. Hare Krishna. How would we explain that? Because the soul is, it's in the region of the heart, but it's all there. The consciousness is there, and so it's kind of like in the head a little bit, and sometimes you hear stories of the bodies get up and run around a bit. That's pretty scary, isn't it? Cut off someone's head and they run around for a while. Where's my head? Where's my head? Like that. I'm over here. Hare Krishna. Actually, because of Rahu. Rahu, the head was cut off, and Rahu lived. So the consciousness was there in the head. So if they had consulted the Vedic literatures first, maybe they wouldn't have done that. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Banachari Jamunatira Banachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasura Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanacharya Jamunatira Vanacharya Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sisi Radha Madhava ki jai Sisi Radha Giridhari ki jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Saranta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Nanda Goti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON Founderacharya, BBT Founderacharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samveda Bhakti ki jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, Sisi Guru and Sri Gauranga. Do you know what Bolo the fish says? Bolo the fish. Do you know what he says? Right there, Hare Krishna. It's right on the board. Now, are we supposed to read a few verses before this one? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So which verse do we start on? 52? Okay, we'll read the English. So this is Saubhari Muni speaking. In the beginning I was alone and engaged in performing the austerities of mystic yoga, but later because of the association of fish, Bolo. But later, because of the association of fish engaged in sex, I desired to marry. Then I became the husband of 50 wives. Jai? Okay. And in each of them I begot 100 sons. So what does that add up to? And thus my family increased to 5,000 members. By the influence of the modes of material nature, I became fallen and thought that I would be happy in material life. Thus there is no end to my material desires for enjoyment in this life and the next. Text 53. In this way he passed his life in household affairs for some time, but then he became detached from material enjoyment. To renounce material association, he accepted the Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. His devoted wives followed him, for they had no shelter other than their husband. They all grew up, went away. What was it? Prabhupada Das once said to me, he says, when your kids grow up, after a while you just become a birthday card to them. They send you a card every once in a while, hey Pop, like that. Or they call for money. Mahabharat told me his daughter, she lives in Guatemala, and he could always tell from the tone of her voice when she would call, Papa, or Papita, is it Papita, Papito, like that. You could tell from the tone that she wanted money, like that. Daddy. Oh, I said, good to hear from you. Well, she only calls when she wants some money. No, but he always tell the tone, the voice, what that call was going to be about. So anyways, that's what happened to the kids. They moved on. Text 54. When Saubhari Muni, who was... Someone speak on 54, though? Because I have 55 to do today. Anyways, there's a purport. When Saubhari Muni, who was quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe penances. In this way, in the fire at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. At the time of death, fire burns the gross body, and if there is no more desire for material enjoyment, the subtle body is also ended, and in this way, a pure soul remains. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Tvakta deham punarjanma naiti. If one is free from the bondage of both the gross and subtle material bodies and remains a pure soul, he returns home back to Godhead to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Tvakta deham punarjanma naiti mam eti. He goes back home, back to Godhead. Thus, it appears that Saubhari Muni attained that perfect stage. Today's verse. Ta swapatyur maharaja. Let's break this up a little bit here. Niriksha adhyatmikam. Niriksha yatmikam. Excuse me. Kim niriksha nirikshadhyatmikim gatim aviyush tat parabhavena agnim shantam ivarchisha that's it. Tatsvapratur Maharaja Nirikshadhyatmikim gatim Aviyustat prabhavena Agnim shantam ivarchishaha Tasvapratur Maharaja Nirikshadhyatmikim gatim aviyustat prabhavena agnim shantam ivarchishaha tat swapratur maharaja nirikshadhyatmikim gatim aviyustat prabhavena agnim shantam ivarchishaha. Anyone like to chant? Ladies? Tatsatguru Maharaja Anyone else? Kishore, would you like to chant? Are you much of a chanter? Anyone online?
Hare Krishna. Tasvapatyur Maharaja.
Tatsvapatyur Maharaja.
Nirikshayatmikim gatim.
Nirikshayatmikim gatim.
Anvyastat prabhavena.
Anvyustat prabhavena.
Agnim shantam ivarchishaha.
Agnim shantam ivarchishaha. Okay, synonyms. Ta, all the wives of Saubhari. Swapratyuhu, with their own husband. Maharaja, O King Parikshit. Nariksha, observing. Adhyatmikim, spiritual. Gatim, progress. Aviyuhu, followed. Tat pravayvena, by the influence of their husband, although they were unfit, by the influence of their husband, they also could go to the spiritual world. Agnin, the fire. Shantam, completely merged. Eva, like. Archishaha, the flames. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. O Maharaj Parikshit, by observing their husband progressing in spiritual existence, Saubhari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, just as the flames of a fire cease when the fire is extinguished. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9, chapter 32nd verse, Striyo Vaishas tata sudras tepi yanti param gatim. Women are not considered very powerful in following spiritual principles, but if a woman is fortunate enough to get a suitable husband who is spiritually advanced, and if she always engages in his service, she also gets the same benefit as her husband. Here it is clearly said that the wives of Saubhari Muni also entered the spiritual world by the influence of their husband. They were unfit, but because they were faithful followers of their husband, they also entered the spiritual world with him. Thus, a woman should be a faithful servant of her husband, and if the husband is spiritually advanced, the woman will automatically get the opportunity to enter the spiritual world. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Downfall of Saubhari Muni. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unminitam Nena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadandikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Vancha Kalpatarubhashta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patidanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. All glories to the assembled devotees. By your ardent wishes and prayers, I'll try to say a few pertinent things. I'll lay off the trivia as far as guillotines and things like that. So, it's interesting, the chapter is the downfall of Saubhari Muni, but has a good ending to it. Redemption, or what do you call it? Bouncing back, or what do you call it? Fall and redemption of Saubhari Muni, because he made it back. He made it back. Like that. He fell pretty far, as he just, with the first verse I read today, the translation, he himself is lamenting about how far he fell. And what do they say? The higher they are, the higher you are, the taller you are, what is that? Yeah. Is that what it is? The higher, the harder? Okay. So he had attained almost perfection. And meditating underwater in the Muni River. It's pretty quiet there. I did a test the other day. I was in a pool. and all this noise, and I went underneath, and the sound must just bounce right off the top of the water. It's very quiet down there. It's very quiet down there. But I mean, he was on a very, very high level of spiritual advancement. Of course, it came out in the story what happened to him, why he fell, right? His offense. So no matter how high we go, if we're not careful about offenses, and I guess this is you saying, Maharaj was speaking on this, previous classes and so on, everything sarvanash, everything can become lost. So one has to be very, very careful. It's just that one thing. It's just like running along, and you just trip on a root and you just tumble. Just one little thing on there, you just fall. So he was very, very high, and he fell very, very low. It's one thing, so I don't want to be a brahmachari anymore, maybe I'll just marry another devotee. But 50 wives? 50. Like that. So, what has he just said? Oh, is it the Prabhu who gave class last week on Tuesday? What was his name? No. The day Tuesday. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. He was speaking about some other person in the lineage and all that, and had 20,000 sons. He goes, he was busy, right? So everybody's kind of busy. 50 wives, 100 sons, and then you got to take care of them. And they go, the person had a son or daughter, and even today you go, oh, you got 5 kids. Like I grew up in a family, 5 children. My wife grew up in a family, 5 children. It wasn't odd back in the 50s and 60s or before that, especially in an agrarian society, have a lot of kids. You know why? 2 reasons. They can do a lot of work, and infant mortality. Kids just pass away. As sad as it is, they just pass away, even in infancy, or accidents happen, or disease and things like that. So just a matter of numbers. So if you have a bunch of kids, the odds are someone's still going to be around to help you. But so even have 2, 3 kids, there's different numbers. I don't know what the numbers are now. How much it costs to raise a child, hundreds of thousands of dollars, they say. Of course, it's on a modern medical insurance and going to an Ivy League college and this and that, and hundreds of thousands of dollars just for one child, But the point is that even how many kids you have, you got to take care of all of them. You got to take care of them, make sure they're taken care of and grow up and get an education. That's kind of tough sometimes, right? Kids don't want to go to school. Guess whose mother hired someone named Damodar to carry him to school every day? Srila Prabhupada. He didn't want to go to school either. His mother had to hire a man called Damodar to make sure he got to school. So I guess it's bona fide, right? Our spiritual master wanted it. Well, whatever. He just made sure he got there. So I don't want to go to school. You got to go to school. I don't want to go to school. So you got to get your kids to school, and then you got to make sure they do their homework. In the modern day, that's very difficult because they have all this. At a certain point, parents complain they can't even figure out what their kids are learning anymore. It's advanced math and this and that. I remember at a certain point, I said, my kids, you're on your own. Fortunately, they were smart. My daughters were smart because it's like, this is nothing. I have any idea what it is. We can handle other subjects, but it came to math and different things, what is all this talk? So you got to get them educated, and then they grow up and you got to get them married. That's actually, used to be you get them married, but now at least you're concerned that they get married. So many ladies over the years in the congregation are talking to me, my son doesn't want to get married, my daughter wasn't one, she's already 25, she's already 30, she's already 35, when's she going to get married? Can you do a puja? Is there someone you can pray to? They're always concerned. When they're going to get married, when they're going to get married. Big concern. And then finally they get married. Okay. So all this, you imagine that? How many children did he have? 5,000? You say 5, says 5,000. Sons. He may have some daughters too, I don't know, but he got to get them all married and this and that. And then you think, all my responsibilities over. Then you got the daughter-in-law, and then you got grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you think he had with 5,000 sons? Of course, maybe they all didn't get married, but there's a lot going on. That's called entanglement. And then he just said, I'm out of here. He became a vanaprastha. Now, important lesson. There's many different lessons here. This is one very important lesson, and it comes up many different places throughout the Bhagavatam, because it's Vedic culture or spiritual culture, is no matter what's going on, sooner or later you got to stop. No matter what's going on, sooner or later you have to stop, because this isn't our real home. Human life is atato brahma jigyasa. It's meant for self-realization. That's the real business. The whole material world is a distraction. All these different things are distractions from our real business. So if we don't catch it in the beginning, at least catch it at the end. That's what vanaprastha is, right? If you don't catch, okay, but then sooner or later, you got to stop. And Prabhupada uses I forget what the reference is and so on, but Jayadvaita Maharaj in his lectures on vanaprastha, he brings it up to Prabhupada at different times, uses words like cut and different words like you got to stop. It's just like you just have to stop. Just someone gets out of hand, something gets out of hand, you got to stop. You're just going too far. You can't do that. You got to stop. You're going in the wrong direction, like that. Just like if you want to, never mind. There's so many different examples you can think about in your own life and so on. You're just going in the wrong direction. You got to stop. You just have to stop. You have to stop this. It's not good for you. And there's so much at stake. You know that expression? You got a lot at stake here. What do we have at stake? We've got a human form of life. How long did it take us to get the human form of life? It's not cheap. Thousands and thousands of births, maybe even millions, Prabhupada said. And you finally get a human body in the human form of life. You can finally go back home, back to Godhead, finish the whole wheel of samsara. It's a wheel. It just keeps going over and over and over again. Birth, death, disease, and old age. And you can put an end to the whole thing. There's a lot at stake. Just like these people, what's that? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Remember that show? And they got the last thing. If you get it right, you get $1 million. You get it wrong, you lose everything. Talk about pressure, right? Talk about pressure. What's the question? What is the capital of Pakistan? You know? I don't know. Uzbekistan? No, say Uzbekistan. So if you get it right, 10 million. Actually, the lottery thing is $1.25 billion or something. I see it every morning when I drive to the temple.
I woke up and have rooms. It's 999.
So you get that, but if you get it wrong, you lose it all. In fact, not only do you lose it all, you owe that much. Wouldn't that be amazing? Then you owe it. Talk about the downside. So ours is even a higher stakes. It's even higher than that. Human form of life. We don't do it, we blow it. Who knows where we're going to go? And okay, we engage in devotional service sometime and maybe get a human body, maybe even go to the heavenly planets, but you have to come back down. You always have to come right back to the spot where you stopped. You have to come right back to the spot where you stopped and start over again. So there's a lot at stake. So the Vedic culture is, wait. At least at the age of 50, start slowing down. Go to the forest. Become a vanaprastha. That means just slow all this stuff down and start, just like if you're going fast. Does anyone here have a reputation for driving too fast?
I know someone in the
So, some people have a reputation driving faster than they should. Probably everyone in this room, right? Does anyone really follow the 65 miles an hour on the highway? So you're going really fast, you have to slow down. You don't just slam on your brakes and go skidding and flip the car and all that, right? You just slow down, like that. So that's what it's all about. You got to slow down. And so that's the first big lesson here. Saubhari Muni, somehow or other, even though he was in a very, very entangled, he just, by the grace of Krishna in his heart and his previous spiritual activities, it all came back. He said, what have I done? And he left, went to the forest, started up spiritual life again. And In Vedic culture, the wives, they have no other shelter than their husband. It's not like, oh, I'll go find someone else or something like that. Especially they were elderly, they're elderly and so on. So they went with him. They followed their husband and went with him, performed austerities. And it's described here that they, even though not being so spiritually advanced themselves, which may or may not be, which is not a universal principle. Sometimes the wife is more spiritually advanced than the husband and can save the husband. But it says here, Prabhupada's pointing out that women, Vaishyas, Sudras, of course lower than Sudras, they're not inclined to spiritual life. So that pretty wraps up about everyone in Kali Yuga, right? It's pretty even playing field, isn't it? All the women, but then the Vaishyas, then the Sudras, lower than Sudras, Kalo Sudra Sambhavat. So it looks like pretty much no one in Kali Yuga is very inclined to spiritual activities, right? So we're all just kind of like equal. No one's really that inclined to spiritual activities. But if some other, the example given here of the wives, because of their attachment to their husband and serving their husband very nicely, by his wishes and grace and own spiritual potency, they also became delivered. So they're very, very, very fortunate souls to have married such an advanced spiritual person. So Prabhupada makes the comparison sometimes, especially it's there in the fourth canto, the story of Maharaj Malaya Dwaja. And he married Paranjana, the whole allegorical story of Paranjana. And the whole story. If you really want to understand what it is to grow old and die, read the end of that story. Isn't it very graphic about all the different things? He gets attacked, his body, it's an allegorical story. But he took birth again as a woman, a queen, and married this Maharaj Malaya Dwaja, who was a very pious king and so on. And at the end of life, he turned over his kingdom. Another example, they had this training that at least at the end of my life, I should just stop. I better stop. I don't have much time left. And went to the forest performing austerities, and then he died. His wife was serving very nicely, then realized that my husband's dead. He was sitting in trance, but he's dead. And Prabhupada points out, one way you could tell is that the feet are cold. She touched his feet, and they're very, very cold. And you just could tell by the symptoms that it left. Very intelligent. There was one modern guru who left his body. He was in trance. He left his body, and his disciples thought he was just still in trance, but he was actually dead. Then after a few days when the body started to stink, they realized, he's dead. Get him out of there. But they were thinking for some days, he's just in samadhi. But actually he was dead. So, but Prabhupada, in that fourth canto, the comparison of the spiritual master and the husband and the disciple and the wife, the comparisons there, many different purports comparing the two. So the principle being that by the grace of the spiritual master, the disciple is delivered, and but that's our story today. That's our story, Prabhus. That we're all very, very fallen souls, but by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, he made so many concessions, and one should always feel that I'm being carried back home, back to Godhead, by the grace of the spiritual master and the Vaishnavas. I have no qualification whatsoever. They had a saying, I don't know if it's still a saying, you're a different generation, you can tell me. There was a saying about being a mercy case. You still have that saying? A mercy case? Is it still around to some extent? Something like that. So we're all mercy. In other words, we're existing by the mercy only, by mercy only. We don't really have much spiritual qualification in the age of Kali. We're not very inclined to any kind of spirituality or performing austerities, and so many different allowances have been made. The main thing is that one has a sincere desire to serve the spiritual master. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he was in India, serving in India as the GBC, he had to go into the hospital. I think it was for appendicitis or something like that. And when Prabhupada heard he had gone to the hospital, he came immediately. He didn't want him to go into the hospital because especially back in the 70s, the hospitals were a little like, I don't know if He wanted to return to the east, to the west, and get the operation here in America, but it was too late. So he went in, and Prabhupada was right there when he woke up and so on. But he told Prabhupada he had this dream while he was sedated. He had a dream that all the previous acharyas came to him. And actually, we're talking to Srila Prabhupada about his preaching and his movement and so on. And I'm paraphrasing it. And Prabhupada explained to them that, you know, these disciples that he has all over the world, they're not that serious, they're not that austere, they're not all, but they're very, very attached to me. Very attached to me. And the point being the blessing, and Prabhupada said that the dream brought out the real situation. Because of this being, even though having no qualification, practically speaking, because of sincere attachment and love and attachment to the spiritual master, that was carrying us home. That was what was being maintaining us. It's not our great spiritual strength, right? We're being maintained by grace. By grace, that's what we're being maintained by. Just as Saubhari Muni's wives, they were actually being maintained and carried back home back to Godhead by his spiritual potency. So great spiritual personalities can, just by their desire, can carry you like that. It's like a devotee came up to me this morning and wanted me to bless him that he cooked nice khichdi this morning. So if it's not very good this morning, you can understand my blessings don't carry much poomph like that. We'll see. It's all my fault. So if the khichdi is really good, my blessings work. So you can ask me for whatever you want. Now if the khichdi is not that good, just don't bother asking me for anything like that. I just said, may your khichdi be full with bhakti like that. So, but powerful spiritual personalities, they bless you and all kinds of wonderful things happen. So how to attract the blessings of the Vaishnavas and the spiritual masters? By sincere service. That's it. So many anomalies will be there, but if there's sincere service, and that's really what you look for in a devotee. That's what you look for. There's so many shortcomings are going to be there, but is this person real? In fact, I was just reading that. Of the 26 qualities of devotee, what's the most important one? Yeah, surrender to Krishna, attached to Krishna. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur elaborates on that in some of his writings. That's what I was reading. It was actually in Burijan's book on japa. That's the big thing. That's the main thing you look for in a devotee, is their attachment to Krishna. So many things will follow in due course of time, but how attached are they to Krishna and serving Krishna, humbly serving the devotees and so on. This is what will save us. This is what attracts Krishna. 8:30. Let's see, was there something else I was going to bring up? To your advantage, my memory's escaping me, so I can't remember else what I was going to say. Okay, it's 8:30, so we can open up. It's a nice topic of conversation if anyone wants to ask questions or add to it. There's a lot to be added, I'm sure. Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you for a wonderful class, by the way. You made one of the points you made is that sometimes you don't have time in the family life just to give yourself to Krishna, just to surrender. What if we transfer this to this ashram, brahmacharya ashram? What would be the main difficulty or the main obstacle in not fully extending yourself to Krishna?
Well, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to actually give the microphone to Balaram because he's a brahmachari. I think it's an incorrect statement saying that a householder doesn't have time, because the mentality is that your seva is your household life. It's not something separate. So that's the key to any order of life, is whatever you're doing, that is your seva, and to do that, your duties of that ashram as best you can for the pleasure of Krishna. So for a household has all kinds of responsibilities. He's got to make sure his their spouse, good husband, and children are becoming Krishna conscious, right? Householder means money. Householders are supposed to support the brahmacharis, the vanapras, the sannyasis, support the temple, like that thing over there. Brahmacharis aren't going to give to buy a van, householders. In fact, I was telling Dravida Prabhu, I got a call from my old-time big brother when I first joined the movement, one of them, Prithu Shrava, wonderful devotee. He's running, he's in charge, even though he's the vice president, New Talavan. And he wanted me to come out there in May and help with moving the deities from an old temple to a new temple and all the different ceremonies. But he told me the story. They have an old kind of dilapidated. Have you been there? Anyone been to New Talavan? I've never been there. But you have? How long ago? Okay. Well, maybe even in that time, he said the temple they have, pretty dilapidated, and the pujari room, and they had a doctor, congregational member. And they asked him, could you renovate the pujari room? He said, well, let me look at it. And he looked at it, and he said, actually, let me just build you a whole new temple. In fact, Prithu Shrava said during the conversation in heaven, he said, I hope we get another 1 or 2 doctors like that. We could really put this community back on the map. But here's a householder. Huh? No, Mississippi. Yeah, Tennessee is where Pradyumna is. That's Murari Sevak. Like that. Yeah, he's where he is now. That's where he is now, Murari Sevak. Nothing's permanent. He's just testing out. I'm going to ask him to contact Prithu Shrava. They got 50 cows and tons of milk and this and that and all kinds of things to. But it's up to him. But the point being, householder, money, and he builds a whole temple. So there's duties of a householder to make that Krishna-centric, and for Vanapras and for Brahmachari and Sannyasi and so on. So whatever your order in life is, figure out how to make it Krishna-centric. And but you're true in your analysis. Household life, it's more difficult because we get sidetracked. It's easy to get sidetracked by so many different things. Balaram Prabhu, as a senior brahmachari, how would you answer that question? Because obviously I didn't get it right. Look at the color of my clothes.
Triveda Prabhu, do you have anything to say about this? Because I'm sorry. It
was about, the main thing about brahmachari life, as far as being successful and not getting off the track, and we're running out of time, and But we're talking about Saubhari Muni being a householder, and he finally snapped out of it and Vanapras. Well, how about brahmacharis? What should they be meditating on to make sure they don't waste time and apply themselves and so on? Is that correct?
Avyarta Kalapam, that's that famous phrase from Bhakti Samana Sindhu. Don't waste time. I mean, time is really all we have. That's our most precious possession. How are you going to spend your time? And to have the freedom to choose and to know through knowledge, I have to spend my time in this way and cultivating Krishna consciousness rather this way, and just worrying about money and all of these different things. So brahmacharya is a great opportunity, especially if it's set up like this, like Srila Prabhupada with great effort set it up. I was describing in my class the idea of the mutt, the temple with the ashram. That's my understanding of what the mutt is, the difference between just a regular temple. And that was Prabhupada's idea, not just to have temples, but to also have an ashram where you you train Brahmins, you train people who can actually preach and take care of the deities and make new devotees and make new temples and so forth. So brahmacharya is a great opportunity because of the freedom to really dive in, just like now is the marathon. This is a book distribution. And it means, you have, I remember in the day, and now I still think it's like that, the morning program is there, and then as many people as possible go out and surrender, and you make advancement that way. Because you don't have so many other things to worry about, you're just worrying about refining the service so that you can somehow distribute books and refine that, and you're in a much better shape. It's just like you have a better chance. It's an easier opportunity to make advancement in brahmacharya life because of the lack of distractions and the lack of temptations and so many different things. But it has to be done properly, otherwise, you have to leave.
Thank you, Triveda Prabhu. So just in addition to that, as we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's books that brahmacharya life means largely to be trained in Krishna consciousness, or to be trained how to be a human being, first of all, so that one can participate in society properly, like as a householder. Bad brahmacharya means bad householder. So, or they could remain a senior brahmachari and be a good example, or move to sannyas ashram. So however you look at it, it's a preparation for future. And in a brahmachari is being trained how to be intelligent. And what does it mean to be intelligent? Intelligent means they have to take guidance from others. It means they have to give up their false ego, and they have to listen to someone else. That's what it means to be intelligent. Unintelligent is you don't listen to anybody. So brahmacharya is trained like that as well. And a brahmacharya should take shelter of the process of devotional service. We have the morning program. That's a very special thing for brahmacharya to take shelter of. What type of brahmacharya doesn't take shelter of the morning program? You have to take shelter of the morning program, and swadhyaya, to read, to study, to hear, to become educated. That's also a very prime duty of a brahmachari. And I'll be done soon, don't worry. And to give up one's selfishness. The conditioned soul has a strong tendency to be selfish. So brahmacharya means training to give up that selfishness. And like Srila Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita purport, that one should be training their mind how to do good for others, to always think of the welfare of others. So a brahmacharya should train their mind like that. Selfish brahmacharya is not a good brahmacharya at all. They have to train their mind how to be selfless and always thinking of how to do good for others. How to do good for the conditioned souls, how to serve the devotees, how to serve their spiritual master, to give up that selfishness. And that will be good for them, and later that will be good for their household life as a grihasta. Of course, grihasta is further training how to give up selfishness, but they'll be very helpful for them to be a successful grihasta, and it'll be very helpful for them to be a senior brahmachari or a sannyasi, because selfish sannyasi, selfish. So it's always a bad thing. So those are just some thoughts. So you could say that those are the things we should do, but those are also a challenge. So we have to try to overcome all of that and try to be trained in the proper way. So those are some things. Of course, people give talks and seminars and write books, so look into that.
Answer your question? That's a lot to chew on.
Yeah, but that's nice. Maybe in addition, if you or Balaram Prabhu would like to say us what Balaram Prabhu was mentioning about selfishness, I'd like to hear more about selfishness in the brahmacharya ashram. What does that look like?
Selflessness or selfishness?
Selfishness in the brahmacharya. Anyone would like to?
Well, the thing is, in brahmachari life, actually life in general, means to learn how to become a humble servant. So there are many, actually every ashram, there's so many, but especially brahmachari, it's set up that you're a menial servant. What does menial mean, Triveda Prabhu? Menial. Menial servant. What does that word menial mean? Menial.
Menial means you don't balk at doing the pots or sweeping the floor, something like that. Very humble service. There's not much honor in it. It's all just a question of your consciousness, whether you can really get into it and get enlivened about it. I remember one of the most blissful moments in my brahmachari career we had such a nice crew in Brooklyn. You know, you had this relatively small townhouse with, you know, we had and a lot of devotees living in there. Some lived outside nearby, the householders. But every morning we had a Maha cleanup, you know. So at one point, my duty after Mangalartik, I think it was right after Prasadam, was to mop the temple room floor. But no, there's no question of mops. You know, we just had 2 buckets. You know, and so there I am on the floor, and there's the curtains were open, and there's Radha Govinda looking at me, and Yamuna had just recorded that Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Go. You remember that? So that's playing. And I said, boy, I'm really well situated here. There's the deities, you know, doing it. And it was there was a menial service, but it was a wonderful experience. And so that's the idea, is that you're ready to do anything, that whatever is necessary. And often something, you know, take out the garbage, clean this, clean the bathroom, you know, whatever it is. And that's, brahmacharya is meant to actually make advancement that way. Trinada Bisuni Chena, you become, you know, humble and tolerant like that. So that's the advantage of brahmacharya.
It's very, very good training. In Vedic culture, it didn't matter what order of life you came. You moved into the ashram, you may be the son of a king or this or that. Everyone learns to be a menial servant. It's very, very good to become humble.
And it's the famous story in the Krishna book of Krishna going out with Sudama to get firewood, and Krishna arranged for a big storm that had spent overnight. You know, so that's a perfect example.
Because it's interesting, you know, the name for a butler in English society, gentleman's gentleman. Gentleman's gentleman. I mean, they're all kind of proud. I'm a gentleman's gentleman, you know. And they go to butler school and there's all kinds of things like that. So we're talking about menial service, you know, just menial, whatever the guru wants, whatever the temple, you know, just, and to actually, what's happening is the false ego is getting deflated. And it's not just becoming a slave to some, you know, bad master in the material world. You're becoming, it's like you're saying, just mopping the floor. For Krishna, and you're in ecstasy. If I said, okay, I want you to go across the street there and mop the floor in front of that, you know, that building over there, it's like, I don't do that. It's like, where's the bliss there? But if you come in here and mop the floor, it's ecstatic. So we really have to deflate our false ego in brahmachari life. But in any order of life, in any varna or ashram, the more our false ego is deflated, we do a better job of what, you know, just like a king. What do they? Or there's this term now for leaders, leader servant. Is that what they call it? Something like that. Servant leader. When you see yourself as a servant of the people you're in charge of, instead of like, Prabhu, shine my shoe. The Prabhupada said that's not what Prabhu means. Prabhu, shine my shoe. You know, you're not exploiting those underneath you for your own whatever subtle or gross aggrandizement. You see yourself as a servant, like that. The guru is a servant of the disciple, the teacher of the student, the husband of the wife, like that. The children, you know, and that's the mentality of the spiritual nature. And the opposite is material. It's just a flip of consciousness. I'm the master. I'm the enjoyer. I'm the servant. And turn matter into spirit, spirit into matter. Yeah. So become better at everything if you're humble. You can make a t-shirt like that if you like. Everything's better with humility on it. Like that. So I think we get, should we end here? Is the kitri ready? Are we ready to test the kitri? Should we end? All glories to Srila Prabhupada.